Boom. We're back. We're live. What's going on, everybody? Welcome back. Another episode of Coach's Corner. It's our weekly live show. We're here to talk about literally everything in regards to transportation. And I got a special guest here. Okay, first and foremost, Matt, I love the shirt. By the way, that is phenomenal. I got to stay on brand with my stuff, but I'll be releasing some new swag here coming up, and then there'll be definitely a component with that. You're in a hotel in Wyoming?
I ended up in I'm just south of Wyoming, Colorado, man. I had some issues yesterday, but
yeah,
yep.
we're gonna talk about all of that. This is my guest, Matt Laird. He's kind of a entrepreneur extraordinaire, man. You got a great story, and we're gonna be talking about all that today. But before we jump in, I gotta talk about my friends over at Bitfreighter. They're literally keeping the lights on for this live show. They've been a phenomenal partner for me. And, they're the preferred EDI partner over here at the Freight Coach. The guys at Bitfreighter are on a mission to connect the logistics industry with a flat fee for unlimited EDI messaging. Carriers and owner-operators alike, you are costing yourself business by not having a digital option to accept tenders from your customers. With the Load Accept platform, EDI is no longer an expensive and unattainable option for companies who may not have a legacy TMS to utilize for your day-to-day operations. Load Accept levels the playing field for your organization and makes you EDI compliant with your customers through automation. If your customers are requiring you to have EDI capabilities, you now have a seamless and effective tool to utilize in Load Accept. Are you ready to learn more? Visit www.bitfreighter.com to request a Load Accept a Load Accept demo today. Just do me a favor, let them know that the Freight Coach sent you. They're a phenomenal partner of mine, Matt. They've been with me since I essentially started this live component. And, it's a great option for trucking companies and, alike, and brokerages as well. I mean, EDI is legitimately such a massive opportunity to move with your shippers. And I mean, dude, it might be something that you could possibly benefit for as you're growing out your trucking company here. But before we go into all that, Mr. Matt Laird, thank you for joining me. Tell us about yourself, man. Give a little bit of introduction. How long have you been in this crazy game called freight?
Man, so I've basically worked for my wife now for about 6 months. Prior to that, I was a entrepreneur for years. So I've started and grown and sold multiple businesses. Freighting started about 2004. I was building drilling rigs in Houston. We were building drilling rigs in Houston, shipping them to the Middle East. So I got to see the whole, how to build it, disassemble it, package it, crate it, customs, get it to a ship, get the ship to the Middle East, get it off the ship there, get it through customs.
Mm-hmm.
It was a really interesting couple of years there. Then following that progression into the oil field, I'm third generation oil field. So basically, if you haven't been around a drilling rig much, it's a really big carnival. Hammers are bigger, the roughnecks are bigger than the carnies, but essentially you drill a well, you knock the pins out, you take it to pieces, put it on a truck, move it however far, sometimes a train, put it back together, and then you continue to do that. So, most of your oil field experienced people, they're in the supply chain just as much as anyone else. Because, you're moving heavy equipment. You came from the heavy haul stuff, so you know how big some of that stuff is.
Yeah.
Then I just followed the progression of different careers of different companies. Founded Camrock in 2014 with some guys. We grew it up to we did Inc 500, Inc 5000, 4 years.
Damn.
Exited it last year in 21, and then my wife and I started a freight company. So we wanted to kind of look at what would happen no matter who was in Congress, who was in the White House, what's going to be important and what's going to stay. Basically, where you're going to be safe no matter what happens, and we decided it's food. So we're basically, we're just moving food. So whatever we started last year, so we're about 6 months in.
Mm-hmm.
We finished 21 net carbon neutral. Coming from the oil and gas, it's kind of an interesting pivot.
Correct. I was going to say.
So, it's just energy, right? So you've got to have energy, right? So any way that you can one, cut emissions, and two, create more energy. So we're trying to do both. So we're going to be net neutral this year as well. So we'll remain net neutral. All we do is reefers. So by the end of this year, our plan is to have 15 trucks and trailers,
Okay.
probably more trailers than that. But we started out, hired some good people, driver wise. We've got really good drivers, a lot more experience than I have, luckily. Um, I got my CDL a couple years ago, so I just jumped in a truck and trying to learn the business. That way I can kind of lead from
Yeah.
experience instead of leading from theory. So that's pretty
Absolutely.
much where I'm at today.
No, I like it, man. Shout out, Mr. Freight Caviar is in the chat right now. Paul Bernard, what's going on, buddy? How are you? If you guys have any questions for Matt or myself, drop them in the chat. As always, again, there's a live show. We'll get up to them. We'll answer them. And I like what initially caught my eye about you, Matt, was a lot of the posts you were putting out there kind of early on, because you have your CDL, you've had it for a couple of years, but I want to say was it 2 months ago or so that you just got behind the wheel of one of your trucks and you went out there kind of on like an exploratory mission, is what it was, wasn't it? Kind of walk me
Yeah.
through that.
So basically, what I did, so I had a deadline. So my wife's birthday's the 13th of January. So I backed it back a few
Yeah.
days after Christmas. I was like, we're going to do this. Let's do it right. Packed my bags. I jumped in the oldest truck we have, took the hardest lanes that we have, just so that I could actually go out and see. It was about a 15-day triangle. So I started out and uh, basically tried to see everything. So I went out
Yeah.
Southern California. We start in Oklahoma, Southern California, all the way up to Seattle back down through the Rockies, back into Denver all the way out to Virginia south to Florida, and then back to the house. So it's a pretty big circle. I wanted to see, one, where the drivers are sleeping,
Yeah.
how the drivers feel. If I could talk to some other drivers, how traffic was, how sleeping was, how the mattresses were, how's the seats when you're sitting in them for 15 hours or whatever. Basically, I wanted to know that when I hire a driver and I say, hey, we're gonna put the driver first.
Yep.
I want to know what that means, right? I don't
Yeah.
want to know what that driver thinks that means. I mean, you can throw theory at people all day long, and you're not going to solve the problem.
Yeah. No,
One thing I
I
did
was gonna
realize is that it is much harder. So getting a CDL is nothing. I mean, I got my CDL in like 25 days. I don't know that I even read the book, right? I didn't go
Yeah.
to school or anything like that. The driving over the road is much harder of a lifestyle than what I ever imagined it was.
And that, like, I love that you took it upon yourself to just get out there and do that. And like, I don't know if you were on LinkedIn or maybe we weren't connected at this time, but there was a last year, maybe shit, man, it might even have been in 2020 at this point. A lot of this stuff is just a blur for me, but my friend Dave Abels, he was he's CEO as well, did the same thing. He got out there and did a ride along, and it's insane what you find out when you're out on the road. And like, I'm from a family of truck drivers. I'm very vocal about this. Like, back to my great grandparents who started a trucking company in Iowa back in the 30s. There has been a member of my family behind the wheel since then. And it is, I didn't have a lot of, I was a kid when I rode along with my dad, like, you notice things, but you don't, like, you can't really conceptualize what a lot of it meant. And then for me, it's you're never going to get a true understanding about what you're doing. And I love the fact that as a leader, you're like, I can't, talk the talk. I got to walk the walk as well. And I got to get out there and do that. What was, from a parking perspective, because like, I was supposed to be out in Tennessee still. But I flew back last night just due to all the weather that they're experiencing out there right now. But I was driving between my client's place and where I was staying. It's about 25 miles, and it was all on a major freeway. And it legit, I saw probably 9 trucks parked on the side of the road. They were clearly stopped because of their ELDs were out,
Yeah.
And what was that for you for parking? Like, what would you say from your perspective, Matt? coming into this, like when it comes to your managing your ELDs and finding adequate parking, what was kind of like a big shock for you?
So I think that it's interesting the way that it plays out. I mean, there's a lot of apps that you can use that kind of have a predictive of where the truck parking is going to be at.
Yeah.
I just think it's a lot to do with your trip planning, and then me just jumping in a truck, and not necessarily knowing any of that. It gets 7 o'clock, you run out of hours, everybody's already parked. So most of these drivers, what I've noticed, so the team drivers are obviously driving all the time, but the rest of the guys like to drive during the day. So at 6 p.m., all the parking spots are basically taken up.
Yeah.
So if you don't have something reserved or you don't have a plan, you're probably going to drive around for an hour, hour and a half looking for somewhere to park. And due to the law, you can't move the load closer to the delivery. So essentially, when you stop and you start looking for a route by the law or parking by law, you have to go the other direction, which doesn't make any sense. You can't forward the load under personal conveyance.
Oh, okay. I got you. And okay, so anybody out there who doesn't know, you're allotted a certain amount of time under the personal conveyance in your ELDs for the day. Was it like 30 minutes or something like that? It's not a lot.
I don't know. I have a court date coming up in a few weeks. I'll tell you how that ends up.
Dude, we'll have you back on at that time.
Yeah. So,
to talk about that. Before, shout out to Andrew Teal. If you're not connected with Andrew Teal, connect with him on LinkedIn. He's phenomenal. I've learned a ton. He's a 4th-generation driver. His family's been in this industry a long time. I learned a ton from that guy. He's also a fellow cheesehead. Yeah, it's. So I got to give a shout out to my friend Anthony Petit right there. He's the co-founder and CEO of Truck Park. They had, same thing about reserving your spot and everything else. But, I was shocked, like literally shocked when the infrastructure bill was passed that there was nothing allotted for truck parking. Clearly it was another miss. And this isn't just the current administration. It was current and previous administrations, again, this is a both side of the aisle issue that not $1 was invested in parking. Like if you talk to any driver out there, again, I've said this before, I'm going to say this till I'm blue in the face. If you talk to any driver out there, safe and secure parking is their number one concern.
It is. And you drive, say you go down I-40 to California, you get to Arizona, there's literally rest areas that are closed down. Like there's gates over them. And there's no, I don't know what the reasoning is before, but close, if you don't want the facilities open, just close the facilities and have a non-facility parking, right? Instead, where the gate's there's 15 trucks parked out in the highway. It just doesn't make a lot of sense. When I was in LA, I literally had to pay somewhere to drop my trailer, but they didn't allow truck parking. So I dropped my trailer at one place, paid them $20, and then I just went and parked my truck somewhere else because there was nowhere you could park the truck and trailer together.
That's insane.
So just an interesting thing. So
I've heard that about the I-40 in Northern Arizona. And initially I know it was everything to do with COVID, but I don't see how that is still shut down. Come on, like Arizona DOT, if anybody out there is listening right now or hears this at some point, Chris@thefreightcoach.com, please send me an email. I'd love to know why rest areas are closed on I-40 still. And I'm sure the driver community would like to know that as well, and then it's like, furthermore, is it really the most safe spot for a truck to be? Especially because they're going to line up next, like you said, near the rest area like that, and then again, like, are you out there ticketing these drivers for parking on the side of the road? And when you have a fucking locked gate 20 feet from there and there's no real rhyme or reason, if there is a rhyme or reason, again, shoot me an email. I'd love to know. And I'm sure the driver community out there would love to know why this is done. Because the I-40 isn't like a seldom traveled freeway by any stretch of the imagination.
No doubt.
It's okay. Let's see. Andrew Teal's got some, I always love hearing his stuff. You're not going to get changed saying by the ELDs don't allow me to break the hours of service rules to find parking or just get the last 20 miles for delivery. The way they have to discuss is around making hours of service more flexible with ELDs as the watchdog. No, I get that. I mean, obviously you can't really fluctuate around with it, but I think like with all the data that's out there, there needs to be something to kind of switch around and make it more flexible so drivers can find parking or something like
Yeah.
that. Because again, it's like, I'm more excited to find out more about the data that kind of comes out about this and how we can actually take this and make these necessary changes to this. And, again, it's got to be, you got to talk to the people who are behind the wheel, not the people who are just reading the data and implementing these changes out there. There needs to be a bigger presence. At least that's what I want to see is a bigger presence. So we got truck parking, the worst kept secret out there, and anybody out there who has any pull, you guys should probably look into that a little bit more. And I'm going to keep saying that. But what was the next big thing for you, man? What was it? Was it facilities? Was it, anything, man? Like what was the number two?
I know like probably the biggest complaint I get from everyone else was you go to the shipper, right? Or you go to the receiver, you're stuck there for however many hours and the facilities are all closed. They may have like a portalet outside. But you literally can't go into any buildings. There's no touch freight, right? So you can't go in the buildings, can't pulp the products. You're still responsible that the products are at the correct temperature, yet you never get to touch them. But then you just can't use the restrooms. You can't get a coffee. You can't. I mean, you're stuck sometimes 8, 10, 12 hours, and there's nothing that you can get, right? And then if you're back to a door, obviously you can't. They don't want you to unhook at a lot of places, so you're basically trapped there. It's just there's really no reason to say it's terrible because obviously the driver should have their stuff with them, but it could be better, right? So it's not unbearable, but it could be better that the shippers and receivers are more open to the drivers.
Yeah, I don't understand. Like, I mean, again, it might, insurance. I understand the insurance argument to some of this stuff. Like, if the driver's inside of our building using our facility and slips and tears an ACL, we're live. Like, I get that argument, but I also don't understand hey, I've been here for 5 hours. Can I please use your restroom? And then somebody says no. Like I don't get that at all. And I was talking to my godfather he drives, and he was in a facility this last weekend. And I truly don't understand this at all. And there was a lumper service. They were inside offloading his trailer. They broke some of the pallets that the product was on, refused to allow him to clean his trailer there. They refused to clean the trailer. They were the ones who caused the break to the pallets. And now it's like, and then he was, because he does reefer freight as well. So he was going from one food facility to another food facility. You can't show up with broken pallets and shit in your trailer. Otherwise your trailer's rejected. So again, it's like on top, this is kind of tied into the whole parking situation as well. That's another lost 30 to 45 minutes to go and have to go clean out your trailer somewhere else.
If you can find somewhere.
Exactly. And that's if there's a place in line. So again, it's like, I don't understand that. Like, how can you cause something like that to happen inside of somebody's trailer and then just say like, it's not our responsibility, get out of our facility, driver. That's all that they're saying right there.
Yeah.
Andrew Teal, another comment out there. The narrative seems to be get rid of ELD. I don't think we should get rid of electronic logs.
I don't think so either. I think there should be an exception. So let's just use yesterday for an example.
Mm-hmm.
So yesterday I was coming out of Missouri into Iowa, getting across Nebraska before the storm came. And in the middle of that, it starts snowing, and now I have to shut down for a 30-minute break. Whereas I would have clearly made it all the way to Cheyenne dry. Now ELD's got me shut down 30 minutes while the storm basically covers the road in front of me.
Yeah.
So does that really make sense? I wouldn't think so.
No, for sure.
I mean, I understand the 30-minute break, but I think you should be able to move it around, right?
No, I get it. Because like here's my honest assessment on that, and I think most people can agree with this. The rule breakers are going to break the rules no matter what. They don't pay attention to the law, but it's like they're like because I feel like you, amongst probably a lot of drivers who are out there who are, doing the right thing, they should be able to use their better judgment in that situation to where it is. It's like, yeah, I mean, there's a large portion of the country right now that is getting just pummeled with weather. How many drivers are, and I think that incident out in Virginia earlier this year is prime example. Like you're trapped on the road, and yeah, there is that personal responsibility. Like, hey, I'm gone. I'm out on the road. I should have food, water, and everything else in the cab of my truck. But like, prime example, what if plan was to stop during your 30-minute break and go do that, but now you're driving around trying to find somewhere to clean out your fucking trailer, and now all of a sudden everything's gone, because real life happens. But again, I think that there needs to be a hard look at how the structure of the ELDs are currently, and there needs to be some tweaks, because again, like that small minority of driver who's going to break the rule, they're going to break the rules anyways. All right, that don't even include them into that substat.
Yeah, absolutely.
So here's one thing that I loved. You had, what was it? What was that? Is it DEFCON, or what is that? The DEF system in your truck? You had that same problem during your first kind of go cross country trip where when you got back, you had to shut it down. Is that a persistent thing?
Same truck. We've replaced every piece on the entire after treatment system.
Yeah.
And then today, I'm issuing the same. I mean, hell, I almost froze to death last night because of the DEF system on the exact same truck. So I've got, over $7,000 in parts put on this thing in 8 weeks.
Okay.
All the after treatment stuff. And today, just one little line that plugs in on one end to electric, and it runs DEF to a valve that basically sprays in the exhaust. DEF freezes at 12 or 17 degrees.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
For some reason, that thing didn't keep the DEF thawed out, and it derated my truck. And literally, I posted about it today. When your truck derates completely, your throttle doesn't work, and you can't idle it up. Well, I had a truck running at 600 RPMs. You can't maintain water temperature, which means your heater don't work.
Yeah.
So when I went to sleep last night, because I actually pulled up to a shop here in Wellston, Colorado, to get it worked on. Parked at the shop, went to sleep about 11 o'clock last night. Woke up at 3 a.m. and it was 27 degrees in my truck and negative 14 outside.
Jesus.
And the truck was still running. So literally just had to get up, hold my foot on the accelerator till I could get, I had to reset take out a computer, plug it in, reset the codes, hold my foot on the accelerator so I could get the temperature back up to warm the cab up. So the reason I didn't reset it before I went to sleep is because when I took it in the shop, I wanted him to know what codes were bad so he could know what to fix.
Yeah.
So I literally reset all the codes, got rid of the derate so that I could warm the truck back up.
How did you know to do that? Like, I'm just genuinely curious. Like, I believe I know the answer, but how many drivers out there wouldn't know to do?
Well, that
just
computer's about $6,000 that I'm toting around with me.
Yeah.
And most drivers aren't going to have one.
Is this
the
something?
reason I have it is because we had a bunch of trucks at my last company, and we had full-time mechanics and everything else, so we had the right tools.
Is that something that you would like to see more of an emphasis on in the driver community? Is like kind of that like, I know drivers' jobs are to drive, all right? Like, I get that. I'm not saying that, but like, would you recommend, if you're an owner operator, to take some sort of mechanical training to do your own maintenance and to know how to operate in that? Because like, legitimately, you could freeze to death in those situations.
Yeah, at that point, it was either, and this little town doesn't have a taxi, so it's either tow truck or police, right? Call one or the other.
Yeah.
Because there's no taxi, there's no nothing. I'm literally like 3.5 miles outside of town, parked at a shop. It could have got bad quick.
Yeah.
And it was obviously 60 degrees in the cab when I went to sleep, so it wasn't an issue. I even went as far as open the hood and put cardboard in front of the radiator so that it wouldn't cool off, but I didn't expect it would have got that cold, but it did.
Yeah. No, that's wild, you know. And again, like this is the reality of what, you know, it's like, but like in all reality, thank God you knew what to do right there, you know, because like you mentioned, there's probably a lot of people out there who wouldn't know how to handle that situation, and then you know, like it just gets bad really quick. And again, like these are the realities of what drivers are faced against. So when you're, you know, again, it's like this is the whole point of all of the content that I put out there, Matt, is it's education. It's the reality of what's going on in freight, you know, because it's like some people are like, oh, rates are sky high, blah, blah, blah. Like that's such a small subsector of what you face when you're out there on the road, you know, because it's not, I'm paying you $8 a mile, figure it out. It's no, it's fucking life or death in some of these situations, you know,
Yeah.
and people don't put that into context. And I will say this again until I'm blue in the face. If you're a broker and you've never been in a truck, I would highly recommend you get in there, somehow do a local ride along, do something to understand what actually goes on out there. You know, what the realities are that these drivers face. Cause that's the only way. Like, I'm not going to sit here and say, like, oh, it's going to be some kumbaya scenario. We're all fucking best friends or anything like that. But you got to have a better understanding about what drivers face out there, you know? And I understand drivers are, again, one piece of the 10,000 piece jigsaw puzzle that is the supply chain, but they're the ones that are out there literally risking their lives day in and day out, you know? And like, again, there needs to be more of an emphasis on that. And I understand that everybody's important in this industry, but if there's
You
not a
know,
driver
there may have been better ways than I handle it. You know, there's drivers out there that have 3 and 4 million miles. Hell, I've barely driven far enough to get my first oil change. So,
yeah,
I mean, there's probably better ways to handle it, or warning signs that say, hey, if this happened, we need to say, you know, we need to get a hotel and turn the damn truck off, or whatever it is. But I'm out there trying to figure this stuff out. There's no manual. Nobody tells
yeah.
you what to do. And
No,
I'm afraid that a bunch of the small companies like me, there's nobody there to tell them either, right? So nobody really knows.
No, that's exactly it. That tribal knowledge that you get through driving for, you know, like you said, 3-4 million miles out there. Like, I guarantee there's stuff that, you know, my buddy Andrew Teal, his family had forgotten, you know, but they just like do it naturally, you know. And again, like that's the important piece of a lot of the content that you do put out there. It's that education of, hey, you know, like this is the reality of what you're going to be facing out there on the road, and you need to have some sort of action. You need to have an action plan. You need to have something in place that, you know, a process. I'm a big process and procedures guy.
Same.
You need to have something for your drivers to follow. Because if you are a smaller company out there, if it is a younger driver, like you're talking about, like you said, you barely have enough miles to change your. I love that saying. I might start tying that stuff in there. But no, it's true though. Like, if you don't know how to react and you don't have a manual to follow, human nature kicks in, you know, and you might not be using the best judgment at that time. And you might cause something to happen that would make it worse than if you had something for a driver to follow to alleviate a potential fatality.
I think that may be a great business model. If there's any entrepreneurs that are listening, I mean, because if you look at like the medical world, you know, you've got like the Axiom and all of those companies that, you know, can triage. You just basically call this number and they'll tell you how to triage your patient. If there was a trucking industry toll number that you could call, say $20 a month, we could be part of this. Hey, we got this problem. What do we do?
Yeah.
That'll be a great business model.
I'm sure there's some there. Yeah. There might be something out there for that. Yeah. Yeah. You're right. You know, it's almost like a hotline. Hey, this is what I'm happening. Cause like, again, like where you are, and I know, like, I've personally had this happen on some of my shipments. You're in a rural area. Like,
Oh yeah.
there's not a tow truck for 100 miles. You know, they're like, there's nothing. But again, it is those, what can I do in the moment style scenarios that, you know, your tow truck driver, they're not going to diagnose you prior to leaving. And if there's anybody out there who's listening right now that you have something like this, again, Chris at thefreightcoach.com, you shoot me an email. I'd love to have you come on and talk about some of this stuff. You know, because there should be, you know, like should be is always an easier thing to say, but like there that would be a great thing to have for a lot of drivers, especially, you know, again, not everybody out there has 2-3 million miles under their belt that know how to react. You know, you might be a younger driver.
Yeah. So going back to the list of things that were really
Yeah.
like the worst things on my list, was the 5 p.m. broker, right? At 5 p.m. you can't get no info, you can't get comm checks, you can't get nothing. The after hour support knows nothing. I think that the broker either needs to, one, answer the phone at night, or two, they need to have a written document that says, hey, if you can't reach me, do this, do this, do this, and it needs to be updated, because I mean, we've lost 6 or 7 hours waiting on brokers before. You know, not me in particular, because I'll just, you know, I would just do something else. But my drivers are like, well, I don't know what to do. I called the broker, nobody called me back. So
yeah. And is that in regards to like lumpers, fuel, comm check?
Well, we don't do any fuel, but yeah, just like lumper fees, or sometimes there's an issue with freight. I mean, sometimes they'll put it back on the truck. What do you want me to do with it? Sit there 6 hours to figure out what to do with it.
So this, honestly, man, I'm like that. That's the shit that drives me nuts about how brokers operate when they do stuff like that. Like, how are you? Here's like, again, I'm not immune to a lot of the complaints that people have against brokers. Like, but I also changed the way I was doing it, because I realized that I was going to lose literally all my customers and everything else unless I did change, you know? What you're talking about right there, if you have after hour loads and you're not establishing contact with your drivers in those situations, like, just don't even move your customers' freight. Like, honestly, just give the freight back. Give it to the brokers who actually know what they're going to do. Because if you're going to operate like that, your tendencies are going to flow into multiple other scenarios, and you're just going to, quote unquote, hope these situations work themselves out. That is absolutely despicable behavior. If, you know, because it's like you're checking your email, you know, like if you're a half of a freight broker, you're checking your email at night. You're fine. You know, because you're at least doing something. You're not just like doing the shutting off at 5 o'clock and leaving if you're half of a broker. And if you are doing that and then you come in the next morning, like, let me ask you this, aren't you sick and tired of dealing with those issues? Like, at what point are you just done dealing with that stuff? Then you have a pissed off driver, you have a pissed off customer. Aren't you just sick and tired of that stuff? What's your limit? I want you, the brokers, I want you to ask you, what's your limit? You know, because that behavior, like, again, I'm not immune to it. I've done that stuff. I've hoped that those problems just work themselves out. But how can you do that? Like, I feel you, man. You know, but there's also, because to me, it's like there's plenty of brokers out there that do a great job. You know, there's good and bad on both sides of this, you know, and you know that. I'm sure your drivers
we have a few brokers that we haul. I mean, if they call, we go get it, right? No matter where it's at, what it is. We know they're going to take care of us. And then we've got some that call, and it don't matter if we had 4 trucks idling, we wouldn't work for them again.
Yeah.
I mean, we've you know, basically we've been added, like, say for instance, a broker posts a high dollar load, like, hey, we got to get this done. So we accepted the load. We were like 45 minutes away, went there and to load it. We were literally at that shipper when the first load was supposed to be delivered, and then there was 6 loads behind, so it's a really long LTL thing. They docked us over 50% of the load for not making it on time, and our truck wasn't even loaded for the first delivery.
Okay. Okay.
So it was about an $8,000 load, and they docked us like $3,500, I think, because $250 per late load, plus something for not some ridiculous thing on the bottom, not taking a picture of the load at the shipper. So it's like $500 per load. Per delivery they charged us. I posted a really long post about it.
I must have missed that.
We debriefed it with the driver, and there was nothing we could do. Literally, we were sitting at the shipper when we missed the first delivery.
Because the shipper didn't load you because there was a
backup.
No,
because their truck had already missed it.
Yeah.
So their truck didn't show up, so we rushed over to help them, and we hauled ass. I mean, everything we could do to get there. And then we literally got probably about 50% of our payment was deducted for late fees. So we'll see how that works out. But you live and you learn, right? So
yeah, we'll connect offline about that. I have some. I'll tell you. We'll connect offline. I'm not going to get into that right now. Besides, like, I mean, reducing rates because of, things happening. And then, yeah, man, I'm going to get too fired up and I'm going to start motherfucking things. And I don't, I don't want to do that right now, man. But no,
Too early for that.
Yeah, it's not too early for that. I don't really sleep. But no, it is those behaviors that are out there. And, and here's the thing. If you're going to reduce a driver's rate, were you aware of those prior to accepting the load, Matt? Let me ask you that before
So I'd accepted the load myself because I was dispatching, and the broker told me verbally, "Hey, we just got to get this thing picked up. We're going to work with you on all the deliveries. We know you're going to be late. No problem." So we just basically, we're going to go deliver as fast as we can, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's all we did. Picked it up. It was like 15 hours to the first stop, whatever it was. So fast as we could go to each one. No lag time between, no breakdowns, no nothing. Every load was late. And it said the fine print in the load con, which I should have read, they needed a picture of the load before we backed into the dock at every stop, or the $250 deduction per picture.
But was that explained to you prior to accepting the load, Matt?
No, but it was on the load con in fine print.
Okay, but still, that's shady tactics right there as a broker. If there is truly a fine or a rate, and again, I'm not a lawyer, but if you're not explaining to your carrier what will happen in the event that something does go wrong prior to accepting the load, that is shady business tactics.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Straight up shady.
Well, yeah, that's all they're using it for. Basically, it's another income stream. Docking the carriers.
I've heard of shippers or customers like requiring pictures of loads, but not in the refrigerated food shipments that I've ever moved. It's been over-dimensional heavy haul where they need to ensure that were your drivers
look at what I posted. I literally have a full debrief. It's
cool.
Probably a 500-word
awesome.
thing about
yeah.
it. Just look at it later.
I'll check it out. I'll check it out, man. Yeah.
Yeah, I went through it line by line, debriefed it with the driver, came to the conclusion that he did the best he could, so we paid him exactly what he was supposed to. Yeah. And us as a company, we took the hit for it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because we're dealing with shady people, you're going to get screwed.
No, for sure, man. And that's unfortunately that's part of it. And again, I've dealt with some shady trucking companies out there as well, so I know it's not just a broker thing. But I understand what you're saying. That's absolutely asinine. Now my blood pressure's up, Matt. Now my blood pressure's up. I'm getting.
So you're banging with the freight coach. That's what happens.
Exactly. That's exactly what happens. But yeah, man, that's one thing that I want to see specifically changed is, that style of behavior. Cause again, you're not doing yourself any favors. And I'm almost curious if the customers are aware that that's what's going on, because, I literally put something up. It might've been this week or last week about not turning your accessorials into a profit center,
Exactly what it is.
It's because that's like when it boils down to it, if a customer's paying, because like, okay, here's another worst kept secret to anybody who's been in the industry long enough. Unfortunately, there are shippers and receivers who won't pay attention under any circumstances. They just won't do it. They never have, they never will. And, as a broker, you kind of you have to take it sometimes with those, that's an unfortunate part of it. But again, it's like, if you're getting paid layovers, detention, stuff like that from your customers, and you're not passing that full amount along to your drivers. I mean, Jesus, I had that phone call, literally had that phone call. Customer called me up. Hey, a carrier called and asked for detention on a load. We paid you detention. What happened? I mean, like literally, how are you going to handle that? Because they know you're lying at that point. They know you're lying, and then all of a sudden they're like, every single load that they've paid you, not just you, but any of their providers, they're going to start questioning, because again, it's affecting their business, because you're just as aware of this as I am, man. The driver community talks. They know what facilities are good, which ones are bad. And are you creating a reputation for your customers that they're not doing stuff when they are? How are you going to handle that conversation? And is it really worth losing out a customer to put 50 fucking dollars in your pocket.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, man. It's that's ridiculous. We only got like, oh, well, we can go over. I don't fucking care, man. It's my show. Like I said, I go through this every
I'm
single
stuck
week.
in a hotel in the middle of northern Colorado waiting on a fucking death hose, buddy. We do whatever you want.
That's awesome. So what else is on your list, man? Because again, like, yeah, like what other scenarios have you kind of experienced here over the last couple weeks of you going through this? What else is out there for you?
Man, I would just say that, we've kind of gone negative on everything. So I try to stay positive on
Yeah,
everything,
let's
right?
talk about positives.
Yeah, let's kind of go to the positive stuff. So I made a list out there of what I think a driver needs to be happy, right? And the truck needs to be dependable, needs to have the features of home, right? It needs to have air conditioned heater, radio, TV, refrigerator, microwave, somewhere to hang up some clothes. Basically, that's right. That's where you start, right? So you don't want to go below that. Anything above that may be too much. The driver wants to feel secure.
Yep.
That goes with parking. That goes with the truck needs to be dependable. The tires need to be good. The driver needs to know if you have a bad tire, get a new tire. Don't try to make it another 7,000 miles on a patch.
Yeah.
And they don't want to feel stranded, right? And I think some of the smaller companies, the drivers aren't as comfortable with the finances of the company. Yeah. What happens if I get stranded? Are you going to have enough money to fix the truck, get me home, put me in a hotel? I mean, that's a real fear. I mean, the small companies are falling off. So one big thing is that I think an APU is super important, whether it's electric, diesel, whatever. That way, like last night in the truck that I was in, if I had an APU, it wouldn't matter. I turned the truck off, turned the APU on.
Yeah.
So those will definitely be added on all the new trucks. Aftermarket high quality seat and an aftermarket high quality mattress. I reached out to Mike Lindell from My Pillow, see if he can make me a mattress. Hopefully he can come back with something soon. But definitely the seats. I don't care how good those companies think their seats are. The factory seats suck in every truck I've ever been in. If you're going to be in that thing for hours, you need that. I would say the Garmin or GPS needs to be mounted in the truck. I talked to a lot of the guys that are like using them on their phone.
Yeah.
And most of they're using like a Google Maps, which is going to drive them over, non-truck routes.
Mm-hmm.
I think it needs to be a truck-specific Garmin or a truck-specific GPS.
I'm surprised there's not, honestly.
So like the Garmin has it, but like the Google Maps on your phone doesn't. So the companies that are using the free or the super cheap ELDs, they don't have
I got you. Okay. Yeah.
Cameras, at least a forward-facing camera.
Yeah.
I thought drivers were going to kind of be upset about it when we put them in. They're actually excited to see them because they're like, people are going to run into us. They're going to try to sue us or whatever.
Yeah.
I think that's super important. Bright aftermarket low beam headlights. If you have not been in a new semi, the low beam headlights, you can't even see the stripes on a clean road.
Okay.
And if you go with a brighter version, they're not DOT approved.
Yeah.
So you have to go with the brightest DOT approved plus add fog lights or something. Dim headlights suck in them trucks.
Yeah.
What else do we need? 24-hour support for the drivers. As far as a company goes.
Okay.
Or the driver needs to know where their limits are.
Yeah.
So if you're not going to answer the phone 24 hours a day, that driver needs to know he can pay for parking, he can pay for a hotel, he can pay to get his truck fixed without calling you.
Yeah.
If you don't have 24-hour support, because you don't want that driver to sit there and be panicked or sit there and worry about spending money. You need to have clear, defined rules for buying tires, whatever. And then they need free showers. If you're not paying for showers for your drivers, that's ridiculous.
Yeah.
And they're not very expensive. What's it? $10 a day or free if you fuel up there.
Yeah. What
Talk
did
to
you
these
say?
drivers.
It was the worst $15 shower you paid for? You had a post up there the other
By far the best.
the best
Best
$15. Yeah.
$14 I ever spent. And then, I mean, unless there's some outlandish reason why you can't do it, you should be able to reset at home every week.
Yeah.
I mean, there's freight everywhere. You should
That's
get
true.
them back towards your house.
That's true.
I mean, that's the list of things that us as a company, my wife and I, we're going to implement right now.
Yep.
All the new trucks, all the new drivers, everyone's going to have that.
Yep.
Full paid health insurance for all of our drivers.
Okay.
So that they don't have to worry about being sick or diabetes or anything like that.
Is that something, you know, I guess as we kind of wrap things up, I like that comprehensive list. I think that's very helpful. And, you know, anybody out there who listens to this and watches this, who's in your position that, you know, you have, you know, you don't own your own trucks and everything. And, you know, because again, at the end of the day, Matt, we only know what we know. And this is information that is completely invaluable. If you are, would you stress to other owners of trucking companies to get behind, if they're not actively behind the wheel or a former driver, to get out there and ride along? Is that something you'd like to see more of an emphasis
I
on?
would, or promote within. You know, even if, you know, if you're bigger, promote up one of your drivers to an advisory position. I mean, you don't necessarily have to, you know, take off your shiny shoes and go drive a truck, but you need someone in your circle of influence that knows the information.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I agree with that. Matt, I know you're hiring drivers, right? You and everybody else out there. How can anybody reach out to you to find out more? I know connect with Matt on LinkedIn, but how can anybody find out more about any available jobs you guys might have?
LinkedIn, I think we post some stuff on Facebook and Instagram and all that stuff, but everything ends up back at LinkedIn. So just reach out to me on LinkedIn. I'm here all the time. I mean, whatever you want to finish this conversation in the bottom of these show notes, I will check in there. So let's keep it rolling right here on this conversation if we need to.
Absolutely, man. We'll definitely. I'll have you back, man. I want to find out about this court date after when you do that. But hey, as always, I appreciate everybody who's tuning in right now out there. Again, I got to all the comments. If you're watching on another platform, I really only see the comments from LinkedIn. Juan Baena, what's going on, man? How are you? Thanks for joining. Shout out to my friends over at BitFreighter. Check them out. Schedule that demo. Let them know that the Freight Coach sent you. It helps keep this coming back every single week, the support that I get out there from all my sponsors. I appreciate you guys all so much, Matt. Thanks again for joining me, and we'll be talking to you guys soon.